sitting in the back row of the bus from Da Nang to Hoi An. It's after midnight and I chant Buddhist mantras in my head. Namo Dai Bi Quan Tem Bo Tát. My mother told me to say this when I was scared, hurt, or confused. It's the mantra of the Bodhisattva of mercy, a call to inner peace. But in that moment, the thought filling my head wasn't a peaceful mantra, but instead, fuck, we're going to get shot. This was the third time in as many days on the medical volunteering trip that we were facing death and maybe my luck had run out. When I first told my mother about this mission trip, I said, "It'll be safe, Mom, I promise. The only dangers would be someone getting pickpocketed or narrowly avoiding being run over in a country where traffic laws were barely even guidelines and something more like friendly suggestions." At most, I expected that my Vietnamese name, coupled with my American passport, might give me some trouble at customs or some suspicious looks from government officials, but physical danger seemed unlikely. It would be my first trip back to Vietnam since I visited 10 years earlier. I wanted to actually remember Vietnam this time to form a coherent image of my motherland that would be more than the scraps of culture gleaned from my parents and my aunts. I spent more time playing the token Asian for my friends rather than being a Vietnamese Chinese American. My parents fled Vietnam in 1979 while my mother was pregnant with my older brother. It was their third attempt to flee the country, and they survived months lost at sea and a year in a refugee camp until they came to Colorado in 1980. The war had claimed friends, classmates, my father's brother, but they still loved their country. My father still dreams of a democratic Vietnam. The South Vietnam flag hangs in our study, bright yellow with 3 red stripes, his protests against the communist star of Ho Chi Minh. My mother used to set me to washing herbs in the kitchen while she cooked so she could lecture while she stirred or sliced through vegetables. She would explain how it was better in Vietnam as she poured vegetable oil into the wok. The education was better, I mean, in wet slices of fresh garlic to sizzle in the oil. She would pull the freshly washed leaves and stems of yao môn from my hand. Trời ơi Mi, đồ ăn rất ngon, có thể tìm thấy những đồ ăn rất ngon trên đường phố. My God, Aimy, she would say, the food was so delicious. You could find the best food just along the streets. When the morning glory leaves had wilted, she would toss in the just seared slices of beef. She would explain the children were taught to respect their parents, not like here in the United States, not like me. The time spent in my mother's kitchen was her perfect opportunity to remedy this American wrong, to put me back on the path of the dutiful daughter who was never allowed to forget that I had never experienced and never would experience my parents' Vietnam. A turn of her wrists and the yao môn sao would be ready for serving, and my curious questions would go unanswered because, after all, I would be interrupting my mother. Usually, by this point, she no longer needed me to participate or even nod that I had heard our dialogue turned monologue. She would remind me as we sat down to dinner that our quality of life was so much better. And without fail, she would always say, "May quá hên, mày có cha mẹ đi sống đời khổ đi vượt biên." She would say I was so lucky to have parents who had sacrificed so much to give me a life in the United States. She told me of how corrupt the communist government was, of how impoverished so many of the people were. My brothers, the product of an interracial marriage with our Chinese father, would never have been allowed to go to college and become successful men. Vietnam had become, in my mother's eyes, a twisted version of its former glory, a lesson in the evils of communism and what happens when an army gives up too early. My mother would tell me if they had stayed in Vietnam, I never would have been born. On that bus to Hoi An, I'm not thinking about any of this. Instead, I'm blowing pages and sages blonde hair out of my face and wondering how they can both be sound asleep on my shoulders while I can't get anywhere beyond drowsy. We pass by a series of lights and then there's a jolt as the driver pulls over. Some officers in Vietnam carry rifles, and how they pull you over is they point the gun at your vehicle. Gobin, our leader, wakes up, and I can't catch the fast Vietnamese between her and the driver, but they sound worried. I peek out the back window and see two officers approaching. The soldiers reach the bus, tapping the rifle against each row of windows. It's quiet except for the sound of the rifle and the rain. Tap, tap, tap. The two of them climb onto the bus, asking what our business is. In the light of the front cabin, I can see the wet barrel of the gun. It would be easy for him to tip it in our direction and aim. I am dead center down that aisle. Namo Dai Vi Quan Thêm Bồ Tát, I mouth. Gom Sing Phật. I wish for my life and our group's lives. I wish for the same luck we had during near-death experience number 1 in Sapa when our vans nearly drove off the mountain in the torrential rain. I wish for the same luck that I had the night before. After some back and forth and several hundred American dollars, the soldiers leave, telling our bus driver to not speed again. A sardonic tip of the hat to Gobin, and they're gone. As everyone falls asleep, I lay awake and feel silly because I know that they never would have killed a bus full of American physicians and teenage volunteers. But that gun reminded me of our night train from Sapa to Hanoi, near-death experience number 2 of the trip. It came as no surprise to Gobin that there were complications with our train tickets. It seemed we didn't have enough sleeper cars. The overly officious officers suggest that our error means we must rebook for the next train several days later. We have a strict itinerary of clinic and school visits, so what we do instead is cram ourselves into the few available. There are 7 girls in our 7x6 cabin, splitting 4 bunks on the floor. I volunteer for the floor because that minuscule increase in space outweighed my slight fear of a roach crawling on me, or one of the girls rolling off of their bunk into either Sage or me. We're settled in and treating it like a big sleepover. Eventually we start changing from our modest below-the-knees short skirts and capris and loose short-sleeve tops into sleep clothes. To deal with the heat, Boop and Andy are in tank tops. Paige, Sage, Audrey, and Jasmine end up in thin t-shirts. I change into an oversized mission t-shirt and a pair of shorts before taking the last turn for the restroom. There are 2 male guards standing by the restroom door at the end of the car. I say "Jiao" and avoid eye contact. Before I came to Vietnam, my mother warned me that native Vietnamese men often assumed us foreign-born were easy, corrupted by American ways. As I walk into the stall, turning sideways so I can avoid touching either of them in the narrow space, one of the guards runs his hands up and down the barrel of his rifle as I try to ignore him. When I emerge, he is right outside the door. I have nowhere to go, and the other guard is gone. He leers and offers me a cigarette. I say, "Cảm ơn nhưng cháu không hút thuốc." No, thank you. I don't smoke. I can't look at his eyes, so my gaze moves from the mustache fuzz on his sweaty upper lip to the tan line, partially visible out of his collar, to the dimming fluorescent light of the narrow hall. He tells me, "Đừng sợ em, anh sẽ không nói với sếp của em ơi." Don't be afraid. I won't tell your boss. Our secret, he says. His stance is wide, blocking my way down the hall, and his other hand is on his gun, fingers drumming a rhythm. He takes a step towards me, and I stare at the shortening gap, inches at most, between his arm and the restroom door. I tell him that I have to go back, that my friends are waiting for me, that I'm asleep. I sound like I'm babbling. And I think back to the Lifetime movies my mother made me watch to learn how to avoid all the terrible fates women could suffer. Say things, humanize yourself, maybe they'll let you go. I use the diminutive Zhao each time because Zhao is what a niece uses to her uncle, a granddaughter to her grandfather, a 17-year-old girl to an intimidating soldier. Instead, he responds with Anne, a pronoun that can be innocuous, but from him sounds too familiar. He offers me a sip from his flask. Đi bên ngoài em, Việt Nam rất đẹp với ban đêm. Just come outside. Vietnam can be so pretty at night. It's when he gestures that I make a break for it, dodge his arm, and do everything but run to the room. I'm panicked and shaky, but I don't say much. I don't say anything at all. I just lock the door and put my pack up against it, pretending it's just a pillow and not a pathetic attempt at a defense. A few minutes pass before the knock. We crack it open, and there he is, gun first, offering his cigarette. I sat behind Sage as she says a hurried, "No thank you," before closing the door against his arm. Everyone laughs, and after a second's hesitation, I join in as both the other Vietnamese American girl jokes about the guard. Lying by the door, I spend the night listening to his steps, measured except for when he pauses outside the room, the butt of his rifle hitting the ground. I can hear him laugh. I know just enough Vietnamese curse words to get the sense of a lewd discussion. So I lay there, and I count his steps. It takes him 15 steps to get from one end of the car to our door, 40 steps to come back. I think of the way he must be looking at the room. 5 more steps until he's back by the door. I think of how close I came to getting dragged outside the car. 4 steps. I think of the way he was holding his gun, jutting out to remind me it was there. I think of the smell of the alcohol from his flask. 3 steps. I think of how long my friends would have waited before looking for me. 2 steps. I think of home. I think of Denver. I think of the detachment I used to feel from my Vietnamese heritage, the feeling of wanting to know and understand my culture, but always being removed. The spaces between Chinese and Vietnamese and American left room for microaggressions to slip into my Asianness until I could no longer close or bridge those spaces. 1 step. I think of what my mother would say. I told you so, Aimy. This trip would be dangerous, Aimy. It's the communists, Aimy. They've ruined my country. This would never have happened if we had won the war. She would tell me I should have been careful, that I shouldn't have been alone, that I shouldn't have worn shorts, because the communists, they'll think you are easy. That 2 to 3 inch difference in length changes you from modest to an American whore. He's outside the door. I think my mother's wrong. I think I'm wrong. I think about how to come home to those spaces, how to straddle them and make them mine. Nam mô Đại Bi Quan Thế Âm Bồ Tát.